The Cosmere book that just never seemed appealing to me, the premise never drew me in, was Warbreaker. Currently one of Brandon Sanderson's only standalone-ish. There's a sequel on the way, but I don't know when that's coming. But I was pleasantly surprised with the read. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm JJ the Bearded Bookworm, and today we're going to be talking about Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. Now, Warbreaker is a book that was written specifically to introduce characters that show up in the Stormlight Archive. Kind of just a way to introduce these characters so that you're not blindsided when people that don't act like the normal people in the Stormlight Archive show up. It does have a sequel coming out. You know, eventually it's planned out. I think Brandon Sanderson's got all the Cosmere books planned out for the next 20 years. But so eventually there will be a sequel to this, but for right now it's just its own standalone book, and it stands alone very well. There is kind of a unresolved, you don't know how things completely play out, but the story itself wraps up and is very satisfying. So real quick, just like every Cosmere book, there is a unique magic system to this book in this world. The magic is all driven by breaths. Now, every single person in this world has a breath. The god of this planet is called Endowment, and so in a way she is endowed everybody with just like a tiny bit of magic. Now, when everybody has just a little bit of magic, it doesn't really make a big difference. However, in this world, I can give my breath to somebody else. They can't take it, but I can choose to give it to them. Now, when I do that, the magic makes you just a little bit more resistant to getting sick and things like that. So then when I give my breath, I become what's known as a drab. Drabs are described as being just a little bit grumpier, a little more irritable, not really excited, kind of this persona of just being miserable and whatnot. And then people that start to collect breaths, at a certain point you meet these certain thresholds, and in the book it's really unclear what those actually are, and I think there is a little bit of play as far as when you meet those thresholds, depending on the quality of breath or just the person overall. But as you meet these certain thresholds, you start to accumulate abilities. Some of them being you can sense the breath in other people. You start to be able to see perfect hue. You can tell the difference between all the different shades of particular colors, as well as perfect pitch, so you can hear differences in people's voices and whatnot. Then another cool ability is, as you accumulate these breaths, I can actually give the breaths to objects and awaken them. And now awakening has its own crazy abilities. You essentially infuse objects with magic to make them animate and do things that you command them to do. The more human-like the object is, the easier it is to awaken it and to get it to do the things that you're wanting to do. So for instance, in the book, people will make little vague human shapes, and it takes less breath to awaken them than, say, just a rope or something like that. You have two other types of beings in this book. One are the returned. Now, the returned are people who have died and now have a divine breath. They are able to, basically, they're immortal. Rather than have lots of breaths, they have one divine breath that counts for a ton of breaths. And so, they basically live forever. They're able to see all the perfect hues, perfect pitch and all that things. However, they have to consume one breath, a normal mundane breath, every week, or else they die. Typically in this world, the returned are revered as gods and worshipped as such. The other, life form are what are called lifeless, and these are dead bodies that have become reanimated. They're basically infused with breath. That breath is stuck on that. You cannot get it back, but they're able to get a whole lot more commands, do a lot more complex things. Lifeless are essentially a kind of mix between like a zombie and a Frankenstein type. For the most part, they're going to be like your soldiers, your workers, basically things that you don't want to do or view as expendable. They are viewed as like very below like bottom class. They're really just treated as property. They're never, if they do have a name, they're more like this person's lifeless. Of all the Cosmere books, Warbreaker was the book where each person's point of view, I was like, give me, give me, give me. I never had a character where I was like, or like indifferent or anything like that. Some of the characters themselves I found were boring or annoying, but with everything going on in the story, I was just so interested and so enthralled with everything. The first point of view character is Ciri. She is the youngest daughter of a king. And this kingdom that Ciri grew up in has a treaty with the kingdom where all the returned live and are worshipped as gods. And basically the treaty stated that the king needed to send his daughter to the god king at a certain age and she would become his wife. Ciri's older sister Vivenna was the one that was supposed to go, but in a quick little political, legal finagling, he sends his youngest daughter instead. And so Ciri, who basically grew up thinking she was redundant and had served no real purpose, and basically spent her life goofing off, doing whatever she wanted, and all of a sudden, Ciri has the weight of the entire country and the fate of the country put on her shoulders as she's sent to go marry the God King. The second point of view character is Vivenna, and Vivenna was the daughter that was meant to go marry the God King. She's the oldest. She basically spent her entire life preparing herself, being taught, not just things of her kingdom, but also taught things about this other kingdom, the culture and how everything worked. And basically spent her entire life with that weight on her, knowing I have to go do these things. This is my duty. And then with no consulting, her younger sister gets sent. Now Vivenna loves her sister so much that she's like, no, I gotta go save her. And so without telling her father, she also takes off as soon as she finds out. Her goal is basically to go find her sister and is going to take her from her and basically potentially try to take her place. The third main character in this book is my personal favorite, and he is Lightsong. Lightsong is one of the returned. He is one of the beings that is worshipped as a god. Now what's fun about Lightsong is he rejects this premise. He refuses to act like a god, or at least act like the other gods. He is constantly putting off duties that he deems he shouldn't have to do. The only one that he begrudgingly does is ones that force him to interact with like the common people. The common people are constantly making or commissioning gifts to take to the gods, and then the gods, judge how good the art is or the whatever it is. And based on that, the priests then return to that person with their kind of like prophecy. Lightsongs also have visions of his past, and rather than just kind of brushing them off, is really trying to find out who he was before he became a returned. One fact about the returned is when they come back, they don't remember anything of their former life. They are essentially a whole new person. Our last point of view character, and for the most part, he's kind of the one that gets the least amount of point of view screen time, is Vasher. Now, Vasher is the surly saboteur that has come to that city of the gods and is basically trying to sabotage a lot of stuff. You know, he's going in, I don't believe he actually assassinates any gods, but he's basically going in, breaking in, and doing these things to kind of spread chaos. And what's fun is he has a sentient sword that is obsessed with killing evil. So let's talk about themes real quick. One big theme that kind of goes throughout this entire book, and it is said to one of the characters in the very beginning, is nothing is as it seems. And this could not be more true in this book. All the way up to literally the last chapter, or even the epilogue, is when you're really finding out, oh, this is what everything means. And even then, you know, sometimes there's even more twists and more twists to where once it all gets to the end and it all comes together, you're like, okay, let's lay it out. Now we got all the cards on the table. Now we can kind of take a full look at the grand picture. The other main theme that more personal about the characters is be who you are. Be who you want to be. Don't let society or, you know, other people determine who you are, how you should act. You see that with every single character except Vasher. Vasher's a saboteur. I guess technically, yes. Vasher also is who he is and chooses to be who he is. All those points just, you know, really come together and really show and shine through to where you really feel like, yes, these characters are an example of being your own person. Now, the last point I want to get into real quick is this book is often thrown in there as a good starting point for new readers to the Cosmere. And I have to agree. The most common recommendations are Elantris, Mistborn, The Final Empire, Warbreaker, or, you know, some people suggest like reading like a novella or something like that. I would say, unless you're willing to commit and know that there's a trilogy, although the first book in the Mistborn trilogy does stand alone, but knowing me personally, and I don't know a single person that be like, I'm going to read the first book in a trilogy without in their mind already deciding I'm probably going to read the whole trilogy. But if you're wanting to commit to just one single book and you will only read one book, I would say read Warbreaker. It is fantastic. And characters in this, like I said at the beginning, directly tie into the Stormlight Archive eventually. And this is the first time I had read it, and I understand why people say read this before you read the Stormlight Archive, because characters from this are in that, and I had zero context, so I did not know the significance of, you know, the few characters that were in that. I had no idea who those people were or what that even meant. So there you have it. That's my review of Warbreaker. Have you guys read this? If you have not, definitely recommend it. But if you have, let me know your favorite part or favorite character. Spoiler free, of course. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Once again, I'm JJ the Bearded Bookworm, and I'll see you next time.